If you've spent any time at all on the internet or in a bookstore, you've heard the message, right? It's loud and it's clear. If you want to succeed, you just got to work harder. It's a really simple, powerful idea. But is it the whole story?
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to start with that myth of pure grit, then look at a much better personal toolkit. And from there, we'll start to zoom out to see how our individual hustle fits into these much, much bigger systems, all the way up to the economy we live in right now. All right, first up, let's tackle that story we hear constantly from entrepreneurs and self-help gurus, what you could call the gospel of grit. I mean, this message is everywhere. The idea is that pure effort is the main, and sometimes the only, thing separating success from failure. It's a super inspiring thought for sure, but the actual data tells a much more complicated story. So when researchers actually dug into the numbers, they found something kind of shocking. They studied something called deliberate practice, which is just a fancy term for really focused, intentional hard work, to see how much it really explains the performance differences between people. And yeah, it accounts for about a quarter of the difference in stuff like games and music. But in elite sports, it's just 1%. 1. So why is that? Well, it's because at that top elite level, everybody is working incredibly hard. A college coach put it perfectly. The national champion in a 10K race isn't working any harder than the person who comes in dead last. Hard work is just the ticket to get in the door. It's not the thing that guarantees you're going to win. So, okay, if just grinding harder isn't the magic bullet, then what is? Let's shift our focus from just working harder to working smarter by taking a look at our own personal toolkit. This idea from the book Atomic Habits is a total game changer. What it's saying is we should stop obsessing over the finish line, the goal, and start focusing on the actual path that gets us there. Goals are about the results you want. Systems are about the process that leads to those results. And here is a perfect, simple example. A goal is to have a clean room. You do it, and for a minute, it's great. But a system is what keeps the room clean day after day. It's not about that one-time heroic effort of cleaning. It's about creating a simple process, like putting your clothes away the second you take them off, that stops the mess from ever coming back. And this is so crucial. When your New Year's resolution falls apart by February, it's not because you're a bad person, it's not a moral failure. It's just feedback telling you that the system you were trying to use was maybe impractical or just not enjoyable. So instead of blaming yourself, you can just fix the system. Okay, now this is where things start to get a lot bigger. Let's imagine you've built the absolute perfect personal system for success. What happens when that beautiful system of yours runs smack into the world outside? This is the moment we pivot. We're moving from problems we can solve on our own to problems that operate on a much, much bigger scale. Because, look, it's one thing to fix your own habits. It's another thing entirely to deal with a system you didn't create and, honestly, can't easily change by yourself. See, systemic issues aren't about one person having a bad attitude. They're about the rules, the policies, the ways of doing things that are literally baked into our institutions. And a lot of the time, we don't even know they're there. But they quietly make life harder for some groups and a whole lot easier for others. And this example just illustrates the difference so brilliantly. Dealing with one person's prejudice is one challenge, but taking apart these huge structural barriers, like systemic racism or patriarchy or poverty, that requires changing the actual rules of the game, not just the attitudes of the players. All right, now let's do our final zoom out to the widest possible view we can take, the massive economic structure that pretty much shapes all of these other systems. You've probably seen the term late capitalism thrown around online, maybe as a meme, but it's not just some new catchphrase. As you can see here, it's been around for almost a century. Economists and sociologists have used it for decades to describe how capitalism changes and evolves over time. So what does this particular era of late capitalism actually look like? Well, it's the world we're all living in. It's defined by the growth of these gigantic corporations, by rising inequality, by lives that are often financed by debt, and a big shift towards jobs that are more flexible, more automated, and, well, often a lot less secure. So we've been talking about these big abstract economic trends, but what do they actually feel like for a real person who's just trying to, build a life? Let's really get into that. What's the day-to-day experience of living inside this particular economic structure? Sociologists actually have a name for this experience.
the precariat. It's a mashup of the words precarious and proletariat, and it describes this growing group of people who live with a constant sense of instability, without real job security, predictable paychecks, or a clear, stable career path. So, where does all this leave us? I mean, we've gone from the simple myth of individual grit all the way out to the reality of these massive, incredibly complex global systems. How in the world do we make sense of it all? The key takeaway here is not that hard work is pointless. It's absolutely crucial for your own growth. But we have to stop turning success and failure into a morality play. The truth is, both are a really messy mix of things. Hard work, yes, absolutely, but also luck, talent, opportunity, and the systems we all have to operate inside it. And that really leaves us with a final thought, a final question. Because understanding this dance between our own personal systems and the world systems gives us real power. We have two sets of levers we can pull. We can work on improving our own habits and our own processes, and we can work on changing the larger systems that shape all of our lives. The question is, where do you start?